Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of Prospect Corner here at the Hockey Writers. I'm your host, Matthew Zator, and as always, joined in by Dayton Reimer. Dayton, how's it going? We're days away from the playoffs starting in all the junior leagues, and it's fun time for a lot of these players and a lot of these top teams. And then we have the Memorial Cup coming up as well. Pretty exciting. So, how's it going?
Oh man, it's great, right? The Blades are actually in the playoffs, and everyone was saying at the beginning of the season that's never going to happen. Maybe they sneak in as like the 8th seed, but no, they were in competition for first place in the East Division. Like they weren't competing with Calgary or Medicine Hat or anything like that. But no, it's fantastic. This is a great time for watching hockey. I'm excited to get to go to more playoff games. Maybe they make it to the next round, but I believe I'm getting a little bit of ahead of myself here. So I'll leave that for later.
Well, on that note, yeah, we're going to preview the WHL playoffs. We're not going to preview all the leagues. That'll take a bit of time. But we're going to do the WHL to start. And next week, we won't be previewing the OHL playoffs. We'll talk about them because would have started. Probably game 1, game 2 coming up when we get together again. But we're going to preview the WHL playoffs in this episode because Dayton, as everyone knows, is an expert in the WHL because he does cover the Saskatoon Blades and, of course, sees a lot of teams come through there. If you followed his WHL journey series as well, check that out. You're in what, 7, 8?
Yes, working on the 8th edition. I won't spoil it, but it was a really fun one. Got to go with my uncle and actually got to watch it in a luxury suite. That was the first time for that. So
yeah, so you're well versed in the WHL. So that's why we're doing
Thank you.
A preview of the WHL playoffs. Lots of great teams involved here and lots of great players, as we'll talk about. So let's get started. And we're going to start with the Swift Current Broncos and the Medicine Hat Tigers. And as you can see, we're going to start with the Eastern Conference here. And as you can see there, a couple of the star players involved. One we're going to talk about for sure is not going to be drafted until the 2026 draft. And that series will start on Friday and for game 1 in Medicine Hat because they're the top seed. So Dayton, I'll start with you. I always say start with you since you're the only one here, but it's what do you think about this series? I mean, this is a pretty good matchup. I mean, Medicine Hat's got 200-point players on their team coming up, as we all know, with Gavin McKenna just ripping up the WHL this season as he did last season. What do you think about this matchup? Some players to watch to start here.
Yeah, I don't want to be too negative, but this is going to be a quick series. The Tigers have just been incredibly dominant all season. This is kind of their time to take first and take their championship if they want it. We talk about Stanley Cup windows. This is their Chenoweth Cup window. This year, maybe next year, if McKenna's still around. Most likely he will be, but they'll lose some other guys. So it'll be tougher. Anyways, yeah, so Gavin McKenna, 129 points, 41 goals in 56 games. He is currently the face of the WHL, right? He's going to be an incredibly difficult player to handle. He is so fast. He can make plays without even thinking about it. His vision is incredible. I don't know how you compete against that. There are a few teams that could handle or at least try to handle that. Swift Current is not one of them. They have some pretty good guys. Clark Caswell, a Seattle Kraken pick. He had 84 points this season, 65 games. But that's kind of it. Reed Dick is a solid goalie, but he hasn't had the greatest season. Hunter Mayo came from Red Deer. He's pretty solid, 27 points, 27 games. But on the defense, you're not going to be leading the offense. Luke Mistelbacher, that's another guy who could make an impact. But how are you going to handle the Tigers? Those guys are good. The Tigers are great. You got McKenna, we already talked about. Oasis Weisblatt, he's got 103 points. Ryder Ritchie, they acquired 61 points, 53 games. Hunter St. Martin, he was a late pick in the 2024 draft as an overage. Someone I mentioned that you should watch, and look at that. He's almost a point per game this year. Almost 40 goals, too. Very, very good player. Underrated. Andrew Basha, a Flames pick. Tanner Mollendijk, acquired from the Blades, Nashville pick. Then they added a couple of Finnish defensemen, Viti Väisänen and Nilo-Pekka Muhonen. So they're patrolling on the back end there. Harrison Mennigan is their goalie. He's been okay. He could be a little bit more consistent, and I think that is the weakest part of their team. So if they can kind of find the holes on Mennigan, then maybe they push the game. But let's be honest, the Broncos are hoping for a win. One win, and that would be a success in this series. This is going to be, I think, the most guarantee for a sweep.
All right. Well, you got a prediction there. Do you think it's done in 5, or are you going the full?
I'm going to go 4. I just don't think the Broncos have enough talent to handle the Tigers. Like, they've got some good young guys. Peyton Kettles has been someone to watch this season. A defenseman up for the draft, could be a 2nd-round pick. But like, beyond that, they don't match up against the Tigers, and they snuck into the playoffs as an 8th seed, and I would be surprised if they got more than a win.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I unfortunately they just got so much weapons. You listed them all there, and they're just insane. I mean, just having to deal with McKenna alone is a a feat in itself. 129 points, 56 games, just insane. I mean, that's plus 60. He's just been dominant all season long. I mean, he had to have that suspension there at the end of the season. But if he would have played a full season, how many more points could he have gotten? He would have been over 100, probably 140. I would think, what he was racking them up there for a while.
Oh yeah,
and Weisblatt's a very underrated guy too. Yeah. What were you saying?
Sorry. He would have competed with Crystal for the lead.
Oh yeah, 100%. So I mean, he's been just great, and I think he'll just continue it in the playoffs. I don't think he's going to slow down for sure. All right, let's move on to the Prince Albert Raiders and the Edmonton Oil Kings, and they are in. Prince Albert's the 1st seed in this one. They'll have home ice. And I believe the Oil Kings were a better team last season. They had a lot more wins, and they still have some pretty good players. So what do you think about this matchup, Prince Albert and Edmonton?
Yeah, this would be a little bit more interesting than the Tigers Broncos. I think we all know kind of where that one's headed, unless something crazy happens, because it always can happen. But yeah, the Oil Kings didn't play as well as they could have this season. I think they, like you said, they did have a better year. I will check that before we go on too far here. Never mind. No, Oil Kings were terrible last year.
So they're better this season.
They are better this season. I think it's just we're going back on our memories of when the Oil Kings were so dominant for so long. They had that run of, what was it? Laurent Brossoit, Tristan Jarry, and then all of a sudden they got Sebastian Cossa. Like they knew how to put really good teams together, and they rode that for what felt like a decade. They've taken a bit of a step back, and now they're back in the playoffs. And they're pretty good, right? They came to Saskatoon. I caught them once. The Sachin brothers are pretty good. Grayson Sachin and Lucas Sachin. I believe one of those guys came from your neck of the woods. I think. Grayson was from Seattle, so kind of close. East Coast. It's all
they're there.
Yeah,
close.
So Grayson led the team with 78 points, 30 goals in 54 games. Pretty good. They've also got Adam Yeko. He just signed his NHL contract here recently. He was almost a point per game. There's Miroslav Holinka, a Maple Leafs pick, almost a point per game as well. Like they're a solid team, but they don't really have any big name stars. And I think that kind of is exemplified by their top draft prospect coming in, Blake Fiddler. He's a pretty solid defenseman. He's big. He's right shot. He skates really well. He plays, two-way smart defense. He's a little bit better on the defensive side than the offense, but still, he was he was a half point per game, 33 and 64, 10 goals. He's got a good shot. But there's questions whether he's going to be a first-round pick. He's good, not great. So that's kind of their team this year. Flipping over to the Raiders, they've been a lot of fun to watch. And I don't know if I'm allowed to say that as somebody who covers the Saskatoon Blades. We're not allowed to say nice things about Prince Albert. That's just the rules. But they've been a fun, competitive team. They are a team that will wear you down because they do have a lot of skill that just is more so like built on like experience and being able to play with each other for so long. Like this is a team that's been together for about 3 years, maybe 4 years for some of these guys. They haven't moved a lot of their pieces. So you've got guys like Niall Crocker, Justice Christensen, Braden Dubé, Riley Boychuk. I think Riley Boychuk's been there. Oh yeah, Riley Boychuk. He's a young guy coming into this team. Who else we got? Luke Morose, Ollie Chenier, Aiden Oiring. Like these are guys who have been with the Raiders for multiple seasons. And so they didn't change too much their roster, but they added Thomas Mercic from the Tigers. He's a Blues pick, and he led the team. 65 games with 90 points, 33 goals, pretty good. And added Lucas Dragicevic, 70 points, 66 games. That's very good from a defenseman. So you've got a very solid team. They know how to score. They know how to play tough. Most of the games in Saskatoon ended with fights because, of course, it did. One guy I would watch from Prince Albert is Max Hildebrandt, the goalie. He has been incredible. He's a guy who will keep you in games when you shouldn't be there. There have been too many times where I saw the Blades outplaying the Raiders, and Hildebrandt just stood on his head. Like he does not get shaken. The only way that I think you could make him crack is just jumping on those rebounds. Sometimes I notice his rebounds are a little bit haywire, but you have to be quick because he can recalibrate and then get kind of back into position. But if you get it right away, there's a good chance. Or he's going to just embarrass you with a highlight reel save. Yeah, I would say he's the best player on their team. Unfortunately, undrafted. He's going to Bemidji State University next season. So one of the guys who signed with the NCAA. And that should be great. I think you'll have a lot of success over there. Maybe end up as a late signing. I think that could be possible. A couple of guys going to the NCAA are guys I'm going to be watching for that. But yeah, that's kind of the what you're looking at. It's going to be a much tighter series, I would think.
So what is your prediction for that one? Is that a longer series, like 6-7 games, or who are you going with that one?
Yeah, I think this one could go 6 games. I would go the Raiders. They've got a little bit more going for them. And with a big time goalie like Hildebrandt, like in the playoffs, that's what you need. You need a guy who can stand on their head and make those clutch saves when you're not playing super well. Edmonton doesn't have one of those guys. Ethan Simcoe's been solid. Alex Worthington's been okay. But you need a guy who's consistent night in and night out. And to me, that's Hildebrandt. And so that's why I'd pick them probably 6 games.
Yeah, I was thinking this series is probably gonna go a little longer. I'll go the full 7. I like 7-game series. So I'll go 7, and I'm gonna go Prince Albert in 7 as well. I think they'll have just a little bit more of the edge for some of the guys that are on their team, and the goaltending is always the one that kind of maybe just tips the scales in a long series. And Hildebrandt's probably would have that edge there with winning that one. All right, let's move to your team, and that is the Saskatoon Blades going up against the Calgary Hitmen. Hitmen also has a prospect that you cover quite extensively for the Ottawa Senators, and that is Carter Yakimchuk. So this one's going to be an interesting one. I think it's probably going to be a really fun one too. What do you think about this series? I mean, you're going to have a lot to say, I'm sure. So what do you got?
I'll try to keep it brief because I'm actually working on an article previewing the series. And you can read more about it there. But I think when you look at it on paper, the Hitmen were in, like, I think it went down to the last game that they did not take first place in the Eastern Conference. The Tigers edged them out with I think it was a pretty strong win. And so they had to take second. The Saskatoon Blades lost their last two games against the Raiders and no longer were in competition for first in the East Conference. They fell to 6 because of the East Conference was unbelievably crazy tight. Everyone was separated by like a point. So one game changed everything. So on paper, that feels like a pretty mismatched series, more so like the Medicine Hat Swift Current. But I think this is going to go 7 games because the Blades have just proven that they don't give up, and they're always within a goal or two of these really, really good teams. They don't have their top talent anymore. I already mentioned Tanner Mollendijk, who's with the Tigers, but they traded away also their leading scorer at the time, Ben Reich. They traded away Brandon Lazowski, who is one of the best goal scorers in franchise history. A couple of really good defensive forwards in Lucas Hansen and Misha Volatovsky. That was a lot of their veterans. That was the guys who got them to the conference final last year. And they were thinking, okay, let's rebuild. Playoffs maybe not in the picture this year. We'll see. They were one of the best, if not the most interesting teams throughout the entire season. They were just always there. They very much have a, like, who says we can't do this type of mentality. Their rookies have been fantastic. The guys they've added have been really good. They've gelled with the team. So, yeah, you're going to get, I think, a really, really tight series. So I'll start with them. Their top guy right now for points is Tyler Parr. He's got 20 goals, 61 points, 66 games. So not a high scorer. But he was playing second, third line role for half the season behind the guys that they moved. Same thing with Rowan Calvert, second, third line guy. He's leading the team with 24 goals. Both those guys are going to be leaned on pretty heavily to lead the offense. But they've also got Hunter Lang, who's been a fantastic addition. Really, really good goal scorer, big guy. David Lewandowski, he is a strong rookie coming up for the draft. Could be a second-round pick, would be my guess. And then, of course, their goalie, Evan Gardner. An injury kept him out for about a month. But talking with some of the guys, they were convinced that had he played that month, he would have been the number one goalie in the WHL. He's just so good, so consistent, and he knows how to stop the puck. He's very quick, very responsive. You can't beat him on a lot of rebounds. Just will make, sometimes there's a bad goal every now and then, but whatever. Everyone has that. Calgary has the better offense. Like, there's no question. They've got a 100-point scorer in Oliver Tulk. They've got a 99-point scorer in Benjamin Kindle, who is up for the draft. Then, like you mentioned, Carter Yakimchuk, not as heavy points this season. I believe last year he had 30 goals. Was it 30 goals? Now I'm questioning myself because that's too high, right?
I believe it was high. Yeah. I mean, yeah.
My memory betrayed me. It was 30 goals, 71 points. He only got 17 goals, 49 points this year. But he's more well-rounded, and I complained about that a lot, that he was kind of a one-dimensional offensive defenseman. He's much better at shutting guys down because they acquired a lot of guys at the deadline. Kalen Parker was on the Moose Jaw Warriors last year. Tanner Howe was on the World Juniors. Sawyer Minio was on the World Juniors. They added another guy at the beginning of the season, Connor Vidston, from the Broncos. He's a veteran, a good, solid WHL guy. And Daniel Hauser, another 20-year-old who just set the record for most wins in the WHL ever. And he's only played 25 games with the Hitmen. So they have really good guys. When they come to town or when they meet Saskatoon, it's always a tight game. So I'm thinking that this is going to stay that same way. They're going to, grind it out. It's going to be high-scoring affairs. Both goalies seem to find weaker times when they face each other. But no, it's going to be a lot of fun. Unfortunately, I do see the Hitmen taking this. I think the Blades have just as much of a chance to make it into the second round. But they're young. They need that experience first. And this is not their year. We talked about Windows a little earlier. Theirs is going to be next year, the year after. That's when they're going to be competing for the top again, because they have such a great core that they're developing, clearly, that is already, competing for the top place in the league. So that's what look out for them in the next little bit here. This year, it's probably just going to be more of a growing season. I would imagine they would, fall in 7, though. It's going to be close.
It's going to be a great experience for all those guys, though, all the young guys.
So much.
Whatever amount of games they will play, it's a lot of great learning and lessons that they'll take moving forward. And you never know. I mean, playoffs are different. The stuff happens. I mean, they could surprise. I mean, you never know, right? You say with them being close during the season, I mean, it's not like the Hitmen has blown them out or anything. I think it could be an interesting, like you said, it's going to go 7. Obviously, there's going to be Saskatoon will win at least 3 games. So
I think so.
I think the Hitmen are going to take this one too. But yeah, the Blades are going to give them a fight, and it's going 7. But I think the Hitmen are probably going to take it as well. But yeah, it should be a fun series to watch. Lots of great. I guess I mentioned a lot of good players there. Lewandowski is a guy I'll be watching because he was really good at the World Juniors for being such a young guy and on a team that didn't have a lot of stars. So he was probably one of their ones and has played really well. So we'll see what he can do in the bright lights of the playoffs and being one of their key guys. So it's gonna be an interesting one to watch for sure.
Yeah, I'll be at hopefully games 3 and 4. We'll see about getting to the rest of the series. I'm going to try to make it. Yeah.
They got to give you more home games too.
Yes, I will be cheering for the Blades, but the head says that it's going to go Calgary's way, unfortunately.
Yeah, they have a little bit more goal scoring and offense.
Yeah,
quite a bit more. So we'll see what happens with that series. All right, let's move on to the Lethbridge Hurricanes and the Brandon Wheat Kings, as I'm reading right there. They're also going to start on Friday. Lots of these series will start on Friday in Lethbridge. So, Dayton, what do you think about this matchup? I mean, there's some good players here too. We've talked about a few of them. Braden Yeager on Lethbridge. He wasn't there all season, but still a really good addition to that team. What do you think about this one?
Yeah, this is going to be another good one. I think it is going to be a little quicker. And I also think that this probably goes the Hurricanes' way, just to get my prediction right out of the gate. You mentioned a couple of guys that have been really good for them, and Braden Yeager is top of the list. He was acquired from the Moose Jaw Warriors at the deadline, another World Junior guy. He's got 52 points in 33 games with Lethbridge. My one complaint is whenever I see Lethbridge play, I don't notice him, but he's putting up points. He is doing a lot of good things. I wish I would see him more. But they also added guys like Caden Price and who else? Jordan Gustafson and Wojtek Port. That's a lot of high-end talent to boost their team. And like they were trying to get that first place. They fell a little bit short. but they have a lot of good guys, and they also had a lot of guys on the team already who were highly skilled. Their leading scorer, Braden Edwards, 77 points, 31 goals, 65 games. Logan Wormald, he's been very solid. He's a kind of a clutch guy. When you need him to score, he scores whenever you need him, kind of thing. That's should have thought that one through before I said it, but he scores when you need him to. And he did it 30 times this season in 57 games. Miguel Marcus, he's been really good. Has only 29 games this season, but 38 points. So he could have been competing for the leading scoring. Excuse me. But I think the thing that stands out to me whenever I've seen the Hurricanes play is they have so many guys that just piss you off. They are in your face. They grind it out. They have guys who will throw you little jabs and like a lot of so many pests. One of the big ones is Shane Smith. He was acquired at the early season. Man, drives me nuts every time because he is a pest of pests. And then you put him with guys like Cash Andreessen, who is another big strong kid who makes playing against the Hurricanes a nightmare. A few other guys, Caden Price, like I mentioned earlier, he's tough to handle. Luke Cousins, younger brother of Dylan Cousins, another guy who's been really tough. Noah Chadwick, a Maple Leafs pick. It's such an aggravating team that I think they're going to go up against the Wheat Kings, and the Wheat Kings are going to sputter because they have a couple of times this season. They haven't handled the Hurricanes well because the Hurricanes are very difficult to handle. They're going to be relying heavily on Roger McQueen, who finally came back from injury and has been doing quite well. But is that enough to get by the Hurricanes? I would say no. Charlie Ellick is there a little bit. Oh, sorry. No, he got traded. My bad. Charlie Ellick is with Tri-City. Forgot that because I have watched him play with the Wheat Kings a couple of times.
Yeah.
So. That's my bad. Sorry. Not a lot of drafted guys. Aside from their goalie, Carson Bjarnason, who I think should have been on the World Junior team. That was one of the ones I thought they missed. Or at least he should have played. I think he was on the World Junior, but didn't play. Or did he cut? There's too many names in my head that I'm juggling right now. He's been good, though. He got a .913 save percentage. Jackson Unger has been also pretty good. He was acquired for the Hurricanes. So I could see it turning into a bit of a goalie battle. I just think that with what Lethbridge is bringing, they're going to... Brandon's not going to have quite enough just to handle them. And it's going to be a tough series for him. I hope Roger McQueen stands out because that's going to really help his draft projection. Same with Jordan Gavin, who's kind of fallen off a little bit after the trade from Tri-City. That's where that's coming from. That was the Charlie Ellick trade. So I think this probably goes 5 games. Lethbridge is very difficult, and Brandon has been good one night, bad the other. And if they can't string together consistent performances, they're going to fall flat.
Yeah, it's good that McQueen's back because he can kind of bring his stock back up. Not like it's dropped so much. I mean, he's still projected. I mean, a lot of like Peter still has him in the top 20. So it's not like he's dropped off completely. The injury, sure, it has limited viewings, but if he can perform in the playoffs, and he has looked good since he's come back, so that's a good sign for him. So if he goes back and plays well in the playoffs, even if his team doesn't go very far, it should get him back in that range where everyone's kind of thinking he's going to get drafted. I don't think he's going to drop too much from where he's supposed to go, but yeah, it's good that he's back and playing for sure. All right, let's move to the Western Conference and talk about what's first up here. Seattle And this is a matchup that's probably going to be pretty. The Seattle Thunderbirds and the Everett Silvertips. Seattle we've talked about them on the show quite a few times. They're not that good of a team. They did make it in, and they did trade, like you mentioned, Sawyer Minio. They traded him away. They're not their high-end team. This is the one that they're not the high-end team they were last season, previous seasons. They had so many good players and so many good draft picks. I can probably list a few of them off the top of my head. Of course, they're not coming to me on the top of my head right now. Kevin Korchinski, a big one, a big part of their team for a long time there. They just had so many good guys. Brad Lambert was there for a bit. He was traded there, but he did play for them for a while. And so, I mean, they've lost a lot of those guys. They're just not the same team anymore. And they do got some good guys. I know, Dayton, you'll probably mention one of the guys. He was Braden Coots, who is now one of their top players because of all the trading away the veterans. But what do you think of this matchup? It's probably pretty one-sided, but what do you think about it?
If Seattle won a single game, I would be blown away. Everett has been the most consistently dominant team throughout the entire season. The Tigers have been dominant. Everett's just been up there since the beginning. I was talking with a ref after Everett came to Saskatoon here, and they said that it was like reffing an AHL game. Like, that's how good the Silvertips were. They were big, they were strong, they were fast, and they just were better. So I think that's going to stay the same in the playoffs. They're going to be relying on a lot of their top guys. Carter Bear, 40 goals in his draft year here. He's been really good. Just a workhorse guy. Tyler McKenzie, ironically enough, acquired from the Medicine Hat Tigers. 78 points in 67 games. Landon DuPont, rookie season, 60 points, 64 games. He's a defenseman. He's going to be something special in 2027. He looked really good when I watched him play. Tried to focus on him because, he's just 15, right? Exceptional status. One of my favorites, Terrence Smith, though, another 60-point defenseman. Really quick. He's a sleep-footed defenseman. But they've also got guys like Julius Miettinen and Caden Hamill and Eric Jameson. Those are big guys. They're going to make things difficult. And they do. That's the game that they play. Like, you just can't get by them because they're bigger and better than you. And so Seattle's going to have to really rely on guys like you mentioned, Braden Coots, who is a very good player. He was named their captain. Radim Murtika, I think is how you pronounce it. I doubt myself every time I look at it because it's 4 consonants in a row. I want to say Murtka, but that can't be right. So I'm going to go with Murtika.
It sounds right to me. Yeah.
Yeah. If it's wrong, you can yell at me in the comments.
Yeah.
But he came over from the Czech league, 6'6" right shot defenseman. He could be a first-round pick this year. And he's been putting up plenty of points too. Seattle's got a decent goalie in Scott Ratzlaff. He was on the World Juniors last year, not this past season. And I thought he was okay. I don't think he got a lot of games, and so I was sad to see that he didn't return. But then Everett added a new goalie, Raiden Legal, he was playing in the Junior A somewhere. I will look it up here. Yeah, he was playing in Manitoba, the Niverville Nighthawks. So he's only here for this season. He's played 23 games, a .921 save percentage. He's only lost in regulation twice. So he's been incredibly solid, a very good goaltender, very good pickup for them because Everett needed to get better, I guess. This is going to be a mountain for the Seattle Thunderbirds to climb. I'm surprised they're in the playoffs. They looked rudderless when they were in Saskatoon. minus a few guys who I really liked. Murtika wasn't over there yet. Coots looked really good. And then, they got rid of Sawyer Minio, which doesn't help anything.
No. here's their top defenseman. So, it kind of didn't help. They made the playoffs with 65 points. The next one back, Wenatchee Wild, 55 points. So, they didn't have much competition for that last playoff spot. Only 30 wins. Far from the dominant that they were up where the Silvertips are when they were that dominant team. I think they were fighting with top spot with them for a while. They were a powerhouse, and now they're not. So that's how it goes in the WHL. You got and any junior league. There's the ups and downs. You get all these great players, and then they move on. Get drafted, and then age out, and then you have to get your young guys in and rebuild, I guess. And it's interesting watching how some team, and it's sometimes it's really quick, the turnarounds with some of these teams where they're not that good one year, and then all of a sudden they're back on top. Then there's also teams that just stay there. It's interesting on how some teams can they do go all through these changes but still stay pretty good. It's interesting watching these leagues and how they kind of go.
Mm-hmm.
All right, moving on to the Victoria Royals and the Tri-City Americans. And this is one that, again, a pretty good matchup. Victoria's got a really good, they actually have a pretty good team, even though they aren't, they are the top seed in this one. So they do have a pretty good team. What do you think about this one? Victoria Royals, another team that's been kind of up and down these last few seasons, but they're in the playoffs and they're actually really good this year. So what do you think about this matchup?
This is going to be an interesting one. I'm not as familiar with the Western Conference as I am the East. Just based on my location, I get to see the East teams way more than the West. I did see when Tri-City came to town. They looked pretty good. That was when Jordan Gavin was still there. I really liked him. He had a lot of speed, really good drive for the net. But then after watching for a bit, you notice someone named Jackson Smith. He doesn't stand out initially, at least he didn't in my viewing. This was pretty early in the season. But when you start looking for him, you realize that he's just not making mistakes. He is a very solid, very reliable defenseman who has a rocket of a slap shot. There is some problem with turnovers that he has exhibited throughout the season. But he's still got 54 points in 68 games. He could use his shot more. Only 11 goals. He's a very, very solid defenseman. So he'll be someone to watch in this series. But the Tri-City guys are going to try to rely on some other guys too. The Tri-City Americans. Maximilian Curran, he led the team with 74 points. You've also got Savin Verk, who was added around October, November. He was a guy who was playing Junior A, came over because of the NCAA rule changes. So he's been pretty good, almost a point per game with the Americans. Charlie Ellick, as I mentioned earlier, mistakenly, he is now with Tri-City. He's a very solid defenseman, not as offensive this season as he was in his draft year. He's only got 8 points in 33 games with the Americans, but he can be a game changer when he needs to be. He's just one thing I noticed was he needs to work on his consistency. And so that might remain a concern. Their goalie, Lucas Mateka, he's been really good. Save percentage isn't quite where you'd want it to be at a 900, but he's going to be the guy that they rely on to get through this series. Victoria's got an interesting team. Brandon Lazowski from the Blades, he went over there, and he's been excellent. He's been a point per game player, 18 goals and 31 points in 32 games. Mixed well with their core of Cole Reshny up for the draft as well. Could be top 15 depending on how things go. You've got some draft picks in Marcus Leponin, Nate Miskey, Justin Kipke. Those are some pretty solid guys. Kenta Isagai, he's a guy who can produce. He was added from the Wenatchee Wild, and he put up 40 points in his 31 games so far. I'm a little surprised that he's not drafted because he's quite a good player, and this is his 20-year-old season. Not that small, 5'11", 176. Like, hard worker, fast. I'll have to watch some more stuff, but I thought he should have been a draft pick. Their goalies are okay. They've been relying heavily on Jaden Krause, a 908 save percentage, which is better than what Tri-City has, but the Tech is a little bit more of a name that you'd recognize. He was a draft prospect last year, didn't get picked. I'd imagine if he has a good playoffs, that could change. I could see this one going 7, but I think Victoria probably takes it in 6.
Yeah, Victoria's got, like you mentioned, a few of the players they got. Tri-City is a lot. I think they're a lot better than their record shows. I think they've got a lot better, more, if you look at their roster, it's kind of surprising that they didn't finish higher, but they were one of the lower seeds. Not really low, but not one of the, 71 points, I believe. They do got some really good players, like you mentioned there. So, this could go a little longer. But yeah, I think it's probably a 6 or 7 game series as well. But I think Victoria's going to take it. They just got a bit more talent to finish it. So I'm going to go with that as well. All right, moving on to the Vancouver Giants and the Spokane Chiefs. This one, I don't know. I think this is probably going to be a pretty one-sided matchup too. We got Andrew Cristal, the top scorer in the WHL, with 132 points, 48 goals, 84 assists. They also got Berkeley Canton, 109 points. So 200-point players. And they got another guy that was almost at 100 points in Shavon Olm, 92 points with 49 goals. He finished one above Cristal for the lead in goal scoring. So, those three alone are going to give Vancouver a bit of trouble. They do have Cameron Schmidt. We've talked about him many times on the show of being a guy that could finish and get drafted maybe high in the draft, probably not because of his size. Brian, Leslie has had another good season undrafted, may get drafted this season. But those are their two guys, and he's a defenseman. He's their second leading scorer. So, Dayton, is this a really one-sided? Is this close to a sweep, or do you think the Giants could maybe battle in this one?
It all depends on what version of Cam Schmidt we're getting. If we're getting early season Cam Schmidt, this is a battle. He is an incredible goal scorer that can weave in and out of the competition. If we're getting later season Cam Schmidt, he slowed down a little bit. He only ended with 40 goals, which is lower than we thought from what we saw at in September, October, November. That's not the pace that we thought he'd hit, right? But he was looking like a 100-point player, like maybe 50 goals, and just he didn't get there. I think Vancouver's got a pretty solid defensive team, but also Spokane added Andrew Cristal, who he scored 22 goals in 29 games after coming to the Chiefs. He's almost a goal a game.
Yeah.
This stat is crazy. He has 72 points in that span. 72 points in 29 games is that's ridiculous numbers. I don't know how else to put it. He has been literally unstoppable. So I think if you have him on your team and you also pair him with Berkeley Catton, then you're going to win. I think Vancouver at least makes it interesting, but I don't see it going past 6 games, probably more so 5.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be a sweep. Like you said, they are a pretty good defensive team. They don't have a lot of goal scoring. Their leading goal scorer was Cam Schmidt with 40 goals. A few 20-goal scorers. Ty Halliburton had another good season. Another guy that was undrafted, I thought he was going to get drafted, but he wasn't. Same thing with Masden Leslie, another great defenseman, but again, 72 points this season in 66 games. Pretty good. So, I mean, those are their three guys that are going to. Jaden Lipinski had a good season. Connor Levis, 23 goals. Tyler Thorpe, Adam Tittlebach, both 27 goals. I mean, they have some guys that can put up some goals, but nowhere near Chris Stahl's 132 points and whatever crazy numbers he's got. And very surprisingly, second round pick of the Washington Capitals. So
that's gonna be the biggest miss for a decade, I think. Like how do you pass on him 32 times and then some?
Yeah, I don't understand it either. We had him. I know Peter had him in the mid first round his whole time.
Yeah, he should have been a top 20 pick.
Yeah.
Not a lot of people had him below that.
Who knows what happened?
Was one of the few who put him in the second round.
Yeah.
Craig, I don't know. What are you doing?
So he's really shown that should have been a first round pick, should have been a top 20 pick, and he's probably going to dominate in these playoffs too. So guy to watch for sure in this series and then beyond as well. All right, final series on our list here, and that is Portland Winterhawks and the Chilliwack. Oh my gosh, Prince George Cougars. I saw the C, and then I went to somewhere else. Prince George Cougars and the Portland Winterhawks in our final matchup in the Western Conference. What do you think about this one? This is the last one on our list here.
Yeah, we'll have to wait a couple of seasons for Chilliwack. That's
I was kind of on my mind there.
we were talking about that before we recorded. This is going to be an interesting one. The Prince George Cougars added Ben Reich from the Blades, and so I think that worked out pretty well for them. Hunter Lang was a high price to pay, but I don't think anyone's complaining with that trade.
No.
So, yeah. Let's see here. Portland, I believe, has the home ice. We've got rid of our graphic. I can't see it anymore. Let me see. Oh, this is the one I'm maybe the most unfamiliar with because I didn't see any of these teams play in Saskatoon. They went to Prince George, so they never came, and I was unable to see Spokane when they came to Saskatoon. That was one of the days I was busy. So these are probably the more unfamiliar teams for me. The Winterhawks have Andrei Stebatak in net. He's been kind of their go-to guy. Not great numbers, an .891 save percentage, but 23 wins in 47 games. Their top scorer, Kyle Chizowski, 105 points, 41 goals. Pretty solid. Next guy, defenseman Tyson Jugnoff, 89 points, 13 goals, 65 games. Portland is one of those teams that's always good. We were talking about how Edmonton was that team when we were younger and completely glossed over the fact that Portland has been that since we were younger.
Mm-hmm.
Like they just don't have off seasons. They've only got two guys who are NHL picks right now. And that is Tyson Jugnoff and Carter Sutherland, both defensemen. They've been pretty solid. Jugnoff offensive, Sutherland defensive, but it seems to work out for them. They don't really have any guys coming up for the draft this year, at least not top picks. Mm-hmm. There's going to be some guys to keep an eye on for sure. But yeah, just one of those teams that is always good. And that's going to make them a threat in the playoffs every time. Will they be able to get by the Prince George Cougars, though? They were in the WHL final last year, if I remember correctly, or at least competing for it. They might have been conference final. Because they've got Riley Heidt, Tariq Parasik, they've got Cohen Zimmer, they've got Villian Kemich, they've got Borja Vallis. Like, that's a lot of NHL talent right there.
Mm-hmm.
And then they added Ben Reich, who's got 20 points in 27 games. So he's able to make a difference. Their goalie, Joshua Ravensbergen, he's up for the draft. Could be a first-round pick. Could have one of the few first-round goalies to be taken this year. They're a high offense team that hasn't quite hit that high that they did last year. I'm sorry. Yeah, Riley Heidt had 117 points last year. Tariq Parasic had 105. They didn't quite get there, but they're not far off. I think they just need an opportunity to kind of flex those muscles again. Could they flex that against Portland and create an upset? We've always picked the higher seed so far, because in the first round, that's kind of what you get. You don't get a lot of WHL upsets in the first round. There's always a few, but we're not March Madness here. There's not guaranteed upsets.
No.
Yeah. Oh, and my bad. Prince George has home ice. They've got 41 wins. Like I said, this is the team I'm least familiar with. I was looking at the wrong numbers here. So yeah, Portland's always good. So speaking of no upsets, I think Prince George takes it again. They've got the better guys, and they've got a little bit of experience. They were there last year, and they want to be there again.
Yeah, I think so too. I think Prince George. I mean, you mentioned a few on Portland. They've got some good, like Tyson Jugnoth has led all WHL defensemen in scoring with 89 points. So he is a guy that could be a difference maker. Seattle Kraken prospect,
of course.
My gosh, and yeah, when we get to the Kraken talking about their prospect pool, it's gonna be really tough to pick the top guys there. But yeah, it's this one could be. I mean, it could be tight. I think it probably goes 6 or 7 games. They've got some guys that could potentially, but I think Prince George has got so much more guys. Like you mentioned, Riley Heidt has had a great season. Minnesota Wild prospect, as we've talked about him a few times. Another guy that dropped way too far in the draft for some reason. And he should have been at least a second round. I believe he was I think he should have been a first round pick, but he dropped into, I believe, the second round, late second round. So, I mean, yeah, they got some good guys. So I think it'll probably be a tight series, but Prince George, I think, will take it in 7.
Yeah. I think so too. Yeah. I should also correct myself. Yeah, Prince George was in the conference final last year. They lost to Portland. Portland went on to the final to lose to Moose Jaw. So it is kind of a little bit of a rematch here. Portland has taken a step back from their last year performance. Prince George has taken a step forward. I would say they're probably a more well-rounded team this year. Last year they got pretty far, but they were taken out when they needed to get past a tough team. So maybe we see a reverse of fortunes. Yeah, that should be an interesting matchup too. All right, well, lots of great series to watch as we get going here. A lot of them are going to be starting at the end of the week here. So keep an eye out and watch some of these games. I mean, wherever you can, that is. I mean, televised places for junior leagues is kind of interesting to try to find places to watch these. Well, I will mention the WHL is streaming all playoff games for free on what is it? I don't remember what it is. Victory Plus. There you go. All right, everyone can watch it. So there you go. Everyone can watch the WHL playoffs this year, even if you can't go to a game. So that's pretty exciting. Not gonna lie. I don't mean to advertise for them, but if you wanted to watch this stuff and you can't get to a game, then sign up for that, and that would be fun because I'm going to do it. I want to watch the game too. Yeah, lots of fun matchups here. So
Of course, they're all starting on pretty much the same day. So you can't watch, unfortunately, you have to be flipping screens watching some of these games. So pick
Just
one.
like March Madness.
There you go. So have fun. I think it's going to be fun to watch some of these big stars, especially guys like Andrew Cristal and we mentioned Riley Height, Gavin McKenna. I mean, these guys are just fun to watch. And again, if you can't get out to a game, definitely watch on the streaming service or wherever you can, because it's going to be fun. All right. Well, thanks, Dayton, for coming on, talking the playoffs here. And we'll look out for the article that you got coming out, previewing the Blades series. And as, of course, you'll be covering that throughout as well. So we'll look forward to that. But until our next episode, we will see you next time.